Gameplan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Memory Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Sitting next to our football game plan analyst, Cornell Hunter, and this is the football game plan fantasy football special. We're going to go through draft strategies, the top quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, every position you want to get prepared for your fantasy football drafts, which are probably coming up. But right now we're going to start with the draft strategy. As with the real NFL draft, you have to have a game plan going into it. What are the major draft strategies that you want to have, starting with number 6? I know you got 6 on your list. What's number 6?
Well, number 6 is when you go into your fantasy draft, you want to make sure that you only have one starting quality quarterback, because sometimes guys will overdraft. They try to get that great backup quarterback. The problem is, in fantasy football, you can only play one quarterback, and you want that quarterback to start week in and week out. You should draft a quarterback that you don't have to worry about if you're going to bench him if he struggles. You should draft a quarterback that you're confident, even if they have an off week, that you can stick with them the next week. So having a great backup just puts you in the bind, forces you to make tough decisions every week. Take stress out of your league, get you one good quality starter, hold off until the later rounds to get you a backup. You can always pick up a backup in free agency or whatnot.
So it doesn't make sense to get like a Tom Brady and a Drew Brees on your roster. You want to get like a Tom Brady and maybe a guy like Matt Castle.
Exactly, because you're only going to play Matt Castle for the 1 week that Brady is on his bye.
And so let's go with number 5. That's pretty good info.
All right, my 5th strategy is you want to make sure that you hold off from stacking backups. What you want to do is fill your roster with the best players available. So however you fill your roster, if you go quarterback first, receiver, running back, tight end, however you fill it, you want to make sure you fill your starters first. Don't worry about getting a good backup until you have a great starter, because you don't want to waste a pick on a backup running back when you can get a high caliber starting quality tight end or even a high caliber defense. So you want to make sure you fill your roster before you start looking for backups.
Yeah, you always want to make sure you got the great starters ahead of guys that won't see as much action as your frontline starters. So pretty good piece of info right there. Don't sacrifice backups for starters.
Exactly.
It's all about stacking good players, just like it is in a real NFL draft. What's number 4?
Number 4 is that we're in a passing league. So nowadays, you may want to go ahead and draft a tight end higher than you normally would. I mean, nowadays you see tight ends getting 10 touchdowns a year. They may not get the yards, but those touchdowns add up. You have guys like Gronkowski now, Hernandez. There's a lot of playmaking. Can't forget Jimmy Graham. So in this day and age, you may want to move up the round that you select a tight end. So I always look for a good tight end early on when people are kind of waiting to the later round. So I usually will take a starting quality tight end very early in the draft.
Yeah, usually you would try to take 2 wide receivers that are starting, but now you may have to just go tight end, then receiver, or wide receiver and tight end, then another receiver.
Depending on who's on the board.
Right, that's pretty tough. What about number 3?
My number 3 is be patient when you come to drafting running backs. Every team has a starting quality running back. So you hear these draft strategies saying, oh, take running back, stack running back. I try to get the best player available, whether it's running back, receiver, tight end, defense. Running backs will always be there. There are 32 teams, 32 starting running backs who get carries. And nowadays, like we say, a lot of teams don't even have starters. They split carries. So you're going to have the chance to fill your running back need. Don't get too overhyped, because a lot of draft analysts or fantasy draft people will tell you to jump on the running backs. I tend to hold off because I know I can get them in the later round.
Right, especially if you have a guy that's a stud, number 1. Number 2 can be the guy that's going to be serviceable. You might want to go with a guy that's versatile, that can catch passes, so you kind of maximize your point potential when you have 2 running backs. Now, what's number 2 on your draft strategies list?
My number 2 draft strategy is something that shocks most people. I always, and I'm very competitive in every fantasy league that I've ever joined, I always go wide receiver first. I make sure that I have the top 2 receivers, because in the NFL, the wide receiver position is one of the most up and down positions. You may have a player get 2 catches 1 week, 3 catches, 80 yards, 1 catch, 1 touchdown. I try to get receivers that I know will start and be consistent, so I don't have to think about it on a week in, week out basis. So I go with the best receivers all the time.
Like guys, like, I mean to cut you off, but you mean like guys like Calvin Johnson,
Andre Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald. I need a playmaker at receiver. So I make sure that I have 2 guys that I don't have to worry about benching them if they have an off game. And also stay away from receivers that are on teams that spread the ball around a lot, because those receivers are also very inconsistent.
Sort of like the Saints wide
receivers. Exactly. The Packers have a boatload of receivers, but from week to week, you don't know who's going to catch the passes. Exactly.
And that could kill your fantasy team. Now, the number 1 is probably the most important out of all of your 6 strategies. What's number 1 on your list that you have to do going into a fantasy draft?
Well, my number 1 strategy is this. In fantasy football, everyone always awaits the draft order. And if you are fortunate enough to have a top 5 pick, top 4 pick, always take the quarterback. There are 4 to 5 elite quarterbacks. You talk about Aaron Rodgers, you talk about Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Cam Newton. These guys are going to put up more points than any running back can put up. So if I have a top 5 pick, I'm always going with the best available quarterback, because like I said, there'll be many running backs there. There are only 4 elite quarterbacks.
And the quarterback has the ball in his hand every play. Also, the unique ability to change the play to a passing play.
Exactly.
So that's a great point. Always pick the quarterback. Now that ties into, that's a perfect segue into, let's talk about the top quarterbacks in the fantasy football league this year in your fantasy football draft. So who's your top quarterback going into this season?
Man, how competitive that NFC South gonna be this year?
Now, NFC South got some good quarterbacks. You know, down by the bayou, they got one of the best of the best.
He's too short though.
Yeah, he's 6 foot. You can't throw for all them yards at 6 foot. So all quarterbacks.
It's a
system. Okay. But there's a guy in Atlanta. That's my man. Game manager.
Oh, perfect.
You know, manage the game. You know, hand the ball off, audible to the run, throw to the check down, and don't throw deep. Now there's a guy in Carolina, he's trying to be an icon, you know, but when you break all kind of records that ain't never been done before, that ain't iconic.
It's system.
That's system. It's
gimmicky.
It's gimmicky. Yeah, he played in a
gimmicky offense. He played in a gimmicky.
It was gimmick. So yeah, they should have took him 3 years to be ready. Last year was a fluke. You know he's gonna have the sophomore slump.
Gimmicky.
Gimmicky.